The email subject line read, "Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Marco Santos stared at his laptop screen in the small Sydney apartment he shared with two other Filipino workers, his hands trembling as he read the message from his boss, Trevor Mitchell, operations manager at Henderson Logistics, one of Sydney's largest shipping companies. The reason given: communication issues preventing effective workplace performance. Marco had only been in Australia for 8 months. He had left his family in Cebu, borrowed money for his visa, and promised his mother he'd send money home every month. This job was everything, and now it was gone, all because of his accent. It had started on his very first day. Marco introduced himself to the team during the morning briefing. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Marco Santos. I'm very happy to be working with you all. I have 5 years of experience in logistics and supply chain management." Trevor had interrupted him mid-sentence. "Sorry, mate. You're going to need to slow down. Can't understand a word you're saying with that accent. This is Australia, not Manila. We speak proper English here." The room went silent. A few co-workers looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. Marco felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he nodded politely. "Yes, sir, I will try my best." Over the following months, Trevor made Marco's life miserable. In meetings, whenever Marco tried to contribute an idea, Trevor would cup his hand to his ear theatrically. "What was that, Marco? Speak English, please. We can't understand you." When Marco emailed reports, Trevor would call him into his office. "Marco, your English is terrible. I can barely understand what you're trying to say here. How did you even get hired?" The truth was, Marco's English was excellent. He'd studied it his entire life, graduated with honors from the University of San Carlos. He could write complex reports, analyze data, and solve problems better than most of the team. But none of that mattered to Trevor. All Trevor heard was an accent. Marco's co-workers started avoiding him. No one invited him to lunch. No one included him in after-work drinks. He ate alone in the break room, scrolling through photos of his family back home, wondering if coming to Australia had been a mistake. Then came the final straw. A major client shipment was delayed, causing significant losses for the company. Trevor blamed Marco publicly in a staff meeting, even though Marco had repeatedly warned about the scheduling conflict in his reports. Reports that Trevor had dismissed without reading. "This is what happens when we hire people who can't communicate properly," Trevor announced to the entire team. "Effective immediately, Marco Santos is terminated." Marco packed his desk in silence, while his co-workers pretended not to watch. As he walked out of the office carrying his box of belongings, he felt utterly defeated. Until he remembered something Trevor didn't know. What Trevor Mitchell didn't know was that Marco Santos spoke 7 languages fluently: English, Tagalog, Cebuano, Spanish, Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean. Marco had spent his entire life studying languages because he loved connecting with people from different cultures. His poor English could switch seamlessly into business Mandarin for Chinese clients or formal Japanese for Tokyo partners. But more importantly, Trevor didn't know that Marco had documented everything. Every dismissive comment, every instance of discrimination, every email Marco had sent warning about the shipment delay that Trevor had ignored, every conversation. Marco had meticulously kept records, knowing that one day he might need them. The morning after his termination, Marco walked into the office of Sarah Chen, the senior HR director. She looked surprised to see him. "Marco, I heard about your termination. I'm very sorry, but there's not much I can..." Marco calmly placed a folder on her desk. "Ms. Chen, I'd like to file a formal complaint for workplace discrimination and wrongful termination. Everything is documented here." Sarah opened the folder. Her expression changed as she read through the evidence. Emails showing Marco's repeated warnings about the shipment that Trevor had dismissed with comments like, I can't understand your broken English. Screenshots of messages where Trevor mocked Marco's accent in the team chat. Witness statements Marco had quietly collected from sympathetic co-workers who had seen the harassment but were too afraid to speak up. And then, the most damaging piece, a recording. Australian law allowed recording conversations when you were a party to them. Marco had recorded Trevor's public termination announcement, where he explicitly stated it was because Marco couldn't communicate properly, despite Marco's excellent performance reviews from the previous manager. Sarah's face went pale. Marco, this is serious, very serious. Trevor could face legal consequences. The company could face a lawsuit. I don't want a lawsuit, Miss Chen, Marco said quietly. I just want fairness. I want my job back, and I want to be treated with respect. Sarah immediately called an emergency meeting with the company directors. By noon, Trevor was suspended pending investigation. By end of day, the evidence was overwhelming. Trevor had violated multiple company policies and Australian discrimination laws. 3 days later, Marco received another email. This time, the subject line read, "Reinstatement and formal apology." But the story didn't end there. The directors had reviewed Marco's actual work performance, separate from Trevor's biased reports. They discovered something remarkable. Marco's logistics strategies had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. His multilingual abilities had opened doors to Asian markets they'd struggled to enter. His analysis had been brilliant, but Trevor had taken credit for it. The board called Marco in for a meeting. When he walked into the conference room, he saw not just HR, but the CEO and managing directors. "Mr. Santos," the CEO began, "we owe you more than an apology." The CEO, Margaret Foster, was a woman in her 60s who had built the company from the ground up. She looked at Marco with genuine remorse in her eyes. "Mr. Santos, we've reviewed everything. Your work, your contributions, the discrimination you faced. We failed you. I failed you as a leader by not creating an environment where this couldn't happen." She slid a document across the table. "We'd like to offer you a position as International Operations Manager. It's a senior role that will utilize your language skills and logistics expertise. Significant salary increase, full benefits, and a formal written apology that will go in Trevor Mitchell's permanent record." Marco looked at the offer. It was more than he'd ever imagined. But he had one question. What about the other employees, the ones who were afraid to speak up? What's being done to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else? Margaret smiled for the first time. "That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. We're implementing mandatory discrimination training, creating an anonymous reporting system, and restructuring management accountability. And we'd like you to help design those programs if you're willing." Marco accepted the position, but the best moment came 3 weeks later. His first major project as International Operations Manager was negotiating a crucial contract with a Japanese manufacturing partner. The meeting was held via video conference, with the company's senior leadership watching. When the Japanese executives joined the call, they began speaking in formal Japanese. Marco responded fluently, navigating complex business terminology and cultural protocols perfectly. The executives were impressed and delighted. Within an hour, Marco had secured a deal worth millions that the company had been trying to close for 6 months. When the call ended, the conference room erupted in applause. Several executives who had witnessed his termination now stood to congratulate him. One senior manager approached him afterward. "Marco, I need to apologize. I was in that meeting when he said those things. I should have spoken up. I'm sorry." Marco shook his hand. "Thank you. What matters now is that we all do better." That evening, Marco video called his family in Cebu. His mother cried happy tears when he told her about his promotion. His father kept saying, "Proud kayo nimo anak." "I'm so proud of you, son." As Marco looked out at the Sydney harbour from his new office, He thought about his journey. The discrimination had hurt. The humiliation had been real. But he hadn't let it define him. He'd stood up with dignity, fought with evidence, and won with grace. His accent hadn't changed, but now everyone was listening.